My dad chose his new family over me. Now he wants me back when everything is falling apart. I'm 17M, sitting on the floor of my bedroom at my grandpa's house, and the silence here is the loudest thing in the world. It's been 5 years since I lived with my father, but the way my phone is vibrating against the hardwood floor makes it feel like I'm back in that house, trapped in the hallway, waiting for someone to notice I exist. My dad's stepdaughter, a girl I'll call my stepsister even though we haven't spoken in years, is dying. She's in hospice. My dad is losing his mind, his wife is a wreck, and they have decided that I am the missing piece of their support system. Because I refuse to go to the hospital and play the role of the grieving brother, I am being branded a sociopath by everyone on that side of the family. I need to write this out, from the very beginning, because when you're told you're cruel enough times, you start to believe it. My life is divided into 2 parts, before the surgery and after the surgery. Before the surgery, I was a normal kid. My mom was the center of everything. My dad was a good guy then, or I thought he was. We went camping, we had Friday night pizza, he helped me with my math homework. Then, when I was 9, my mom went in for a routine procedure. Something went wrong with the anesthesia, and she never woke up. For a year, it was just me and my dad. It was quiet and sad, but he was there. Then, when I turned 10, everything shifted. He started spending all his time on his laptop. He told me he'd met someone. An online girlfriend. He'd never seen her in person, but he told me they were soulmates and that she and her daughter were moving into our house. He didn't ask me. He didn't introduce us over video chat. He just announced it like he was telling me he'd bought a new toaster. The day they moved in was the day my childhood officially ended. Before the girlfriend even pulled into the driveway, trucks arrived. They weren't moving trucks with furniture, they were medical supply trucks. I remember watching from the window as they carried in boxes of sterile tubing, oxygen tanks, a specialized hospital bed that cost more than my dad's car, and crates of liquid nutrients. My mom's sewing room was gutted and turned into a sterile ward. The living room was crowded with monitors. When the girlfriend arrived with her 11-year-old daughter, I realized the scale of what my dad had signed up for. The daughter was profoundly disabled. She was nonverbal, non-ambulatory, and required 24/7 monitoring. My dad, a man who had barely known how to use a thermometer when I was sick, was suddenly learning how to clear airways and administer injections. He became a stranger. He and his new wife, they married within 6 months, became a 2-person medical team. Because his wife was terrified of something going wrong, she refused almost all outside help. They were offered respite care, meaning professional nurses who would come in for 40 to 60 hours a month so they could sleep or go out. She only ever accepted 1 afternoon a month. And they used that afternoon to go to couple therapy or dinner. I was never invited. I was just the kid in the background who had to be quiet because the real problems were happening in the other room. Between the ages of 10 and 12, I learned that my needs were an inconvenience. I remember a Tuesday night when I had a science project due. I needed poster board and some basic supplies. I'd told my dad about it for a week. When I came to him that night, he was sitting on the floor by the stepsister's bed, holding a suction tube. "Dad, I really need to go to the store," I said. He didn't even look at me. "Not now, me. Her breathing is shallow. We're waiting for the doctor to call back. Use the back of an old box or something. Be resourceful." I ended up getting a D on that project. He didn't even notice. Then there was the bullying. There was a kid 3 houses down who decided I was an easy target because my dad was never outside. He'd wait for me after school and try to kick my bike over while I was riding it. I came home once with a bloody elbow and a broken chain. I told my dad. I told him the other kids' parents were willing to talk. My dad just sighed. "I can't deal with neighborhood drama, me. We just had to order a new $4,000 piece of equipment that the insurance won't cover. I'm stressed, the wife is crying, and you're complaining about a kid on a bike? Just ride faster." The worst was when I got sick. I woke up one morning with a pounding headache and a fever that made the room spin. I went to the kitchen to find my dad. He was busy helping his wife lift the daughter. "Dad, I think I'm really sick," I whispered. His wife looked at me with this look of pure annoyance. "We can't have germs in here, me. If she catches what you have, it could kill her. Go to your room, stay there, and don't come out until the fever is gone. I'll leave some Gatorade outside your door." I sat in my room for 2 days, shivering, until my grandpa called to check in. When he heard my voice, he drove over immediately. He found me dehydrated and delirious. He didn't even talk to my dad, He just picked me up and took me to the ER. My dad didn't even realize I was gone for 4 hours. That was the turning point. My grandpa is a quiet man, but he's observant. He started keeping a log. He kept track of how many times he had to buy me clothes because my dad wouldn't. He kept track of my declining grades. He kept track of the medical neglect. When I was almost 13, Grandpa sat me down and asked if I wanted to live with him. I burst into tears. I didn't even have to think about it. The legal battle wasn't even much of a battle. When the mediator asked my dad about my school schedule or my doctor's name, he couldn't answer. He just kept talking about the sacrifice he was making for the family. He honestly thought that neglecting his biological son was a noble act because he was serving a disabled child. Grandpa won custody. I moved out. For the last 5 years, I've lived in a house where someone actually asks me what I want for dinner. I've lived in a house where I am the priority. My dad became a holidays and birthdays parent. He'd call, talk about the stepsister for 45 minutes, ask how school was, and then hang up before I could answer. Yesterday, the phone rang. It was my dad. He was sobbing so hard I could barely understand him. "It's over, he gasped. "The doctor said she's in the final stage. 2 weeks. Maybe less. We're moving her to hospice today. We need you here. His wife is a shell of a person. I'm drowning. Please, come to the hospital. You need to say goodbye to your sister." I sat there on my bed, looking at a photo of my mom. I felt a cold, hard knot in my chest. "No," I said. The sobbing stopped. "What? I'm not coming, Dad. I don't have a relationship with her to say goodbye to. I haven't lived in that house in 5 years, and when I did, she was the reason you stopped being my father. I don't know her. I don't know your wife. I don't care about them. How can you be so heartless?" he yelled. "She is an innocent human being who is dying. This isn't about the past. This is about being a decent person." I didn't raise my voice. I just said, "I don't care enough to support you through a difficult time when you didn't put me first when I was still your kid. You weren't there when I was sick. You weren't there when I was scared. You chose them every single day for years. Now, you're asking me to show up for your tragedy? No. I'm busy being the person you didn't help me become." He told me I was selfish and cruel. He told me that I would regret this when I'm older and realize that life is about more than grudges. He said I was dead to him if I didn't show up. I told him, "I've been dead to you since I was 10, Dad. You just finally noticed." Since that call, my phone has been a weapon. My dad's wife's family, people I met maybe twice, are texting me, calling me a monster, a sociopath, and a waste of space. They're saying that the girl is an angel and that I'm punishing a dying child for the sins of the father. But I'm not punishing her. I'm not doing anything to her. I'm just not participating in the theater of their lives anymore. My grandpa is in the other room. He's been on the phone with my dad for an hour. I can hear my dad's voice vibrating through the wall, screaming that Grandpa poisoned me against him. Grandpa just keeps saying, "You did this yourself, Name. You left him behind years ago. You don't get to ask for him back now just because you're sad." I'm sitting here wondering if I am the asshole. Is there a level of doing the right thing that transcends how you were treated? Should I go just to be a good person? But then I think about the hospital room. I think about my dad's wife looking at me with those eyes that always said I was a burden. I think about my dad expecting me to hug him and tell him it's okay. And I realize that if I go, I'm lying. I'm pretending that he was a father, and he wasn't. I stand by what I said. He hasn't earned my support. He spent his support budget on a woman and a child he chose over his own son. Now his account is empty. Am I the a-hole? My dad says I can't take this back, but honestly, looking at my quiet, safe room at Grandpa's, I don't think I ever want to. Update. I didn't expect things to get louder after I posted, but they did. Not in my house, because Grandpa's place is still the same quiet it's always been, but inside my phone and inside my head. For a couple of days I barely slept. Every notification made my stomach drop because I knew it would either be my dad, someone connected to his wife, or another number I didn't recognize telling me what kind of person I was. At first I read everything. That was a mistake. People who barely knew me felt comfortable explaining my own life back to me like they had been there. Some messages were long lectures about compassion. Others were just insults. A few tried guilt instead, describing machines, hospital smells, and how hard it was to watch someone fade. I realized quickly none of them were actually talking to me. They were talking at the idea of me they had created, the ungrateful son who refused to show up. Grandpa eventually took my phone off the kitchen counter one morning and told me to stop reading it. He didn't say it harshly. He just pointed out that every time I checked my messages my shoulders went up like I was bracing for impact. He muted a bunch of numbers for me and handed the phone back like nothing dramatic had happened. That small act made me feel about 10 years younger in a way that wasn't embarrassing, just relieving. The hospital updates kept coming anyway, mostly from my dad. They shifted in tone depending on the day. Sometimes he sounded exhausted and broken, sending short messages about how she wasn't responding much anymore. Other times he swung back into anger, reminding me that family shows up during tragedy and that I was choosing to live with regret. The emotional whiplash felt familiar. It reminded me of living in that house where everything depended on how stressful the day had been for them. I didn't reply to most of it. Not because I was trying to punish him, but because every time I typed something I deleted it. Anything honest sounded cruel when written out, and anything gentle felt fake. Silence ended up being the only thing that didn't make me feel sick. School felt strange during that week. I'd sit in class and catch myself drifting off, not thinking about my stepsister exactly, but about hospitals in general. The smell of disinfectant has always stuck with me since my mom died. I realized I was carrying two completely different memories at once, one of being 9 years old holding my dad's hand in a waiting room, and another of being 11 standing alone in my own kitchen while alarms beeped down the hallway for someone else. That overlap messed with me more than I expected. I started wondering if maybe my dad wasn't entirely wrong when he said I'd regret not going. Not because I felt connected to my stepsister, but because death has a way of freezing moments permanently. Once someone is gone, there's no changing how the last chapter played out. I talked to Grandpa about that one night while we were washing dishes. He listened the way he always does, quietly, like he's giving you space to hear your own thoughts. He didn't tell me what choice to make. He just asked whether going would actually be for me or whether it would be another situation where I was expected to take care of everyone else's emotions. That question stuck longer than anything else anyone had said. A few days later my dad called again. I almost didn't answer, but something told me avoiding him forever wasn't realistic. His voice sounded different this time. Not angry. Not demanding. Just worn out in a way I hadn't heard before. He talked about how small she looked in the hospital bed and how the machines were doing more work than her body. He described how quiet the room felt at night. For the first time, he didn't ask me to come immediately. He just kept talking like he needed someone to listen. I mostly stayed quiet. There wasn't much I could say that wouldn't turn into another argument. After a while he asked if I hated him. The question came out awkwardly, like he regretted asking it as soon as it left his mouth. I told him I didn't hate him. That part surprised both of us. Hate would have been easier to explain. What I felt was closer to distance mixed with disappointment that never really went away. I told him I stopped expecting things from him a long time ago because expecting anything hurt too much. There was a long pause after that. He didn't argue. He didn't defend himself. He just breathed into the phone like he was processing something he'd avoided for years. Then he said something that honestly threw me off balance. He admitted he thought he was doing the right thing back then. He said he believed sacrificing everything for a medically fragile child made him a good person, and he convinced himself I was old enough to understand. Hearing that didn't fix anything, but it explained a lot. He hadn't seen himself as choosing one kid over another. In his mind, he was choosing the child who needed him most. The problem is that need doesn't erase responsibility. I told him that being needed more didn't mean I needed him less. That was the first time I'd ever said it out loud to him. I didn't yell. I wasn't trying to win an argument. It just came out flat and honest. He cried quietly after that. Not loud sobbing like before, just small sounds he tried to hide. I didn't comfort him. I also didn't hang up. We sat there in silence until he eventually said he had to go because nurses were coming in. After that call, the pressure from extended family slowed down. I don't know if he told them to stop or if they just lost interest, but the sudden quiet felt strange. For the first time since all this started, I could think without feeling attacked. 3 days later, Grandpa got a call early in the morning. I knew what it was before he even said anything. He knocked on my door and told me she had passed sometime during the night. My first reaction wasn't sadness. It was relief that the tension was over, followed immediately by guilt for feeling relieved. I sat on the edge of my bed for a long time trying to figure out what emotion was appropriate for someone I barely knew but whose existence changed my entire childhood. Dad texted me later that day. Just a short message saying she was gone and that the funeral would be later in the week. He added that I was welcome to come but understood if I didn't. That wording mattered more than I expected. It was the first time he had acknowledged my choice without attaching a threat or accusation to it. I thought about going. I really did. Not for closure with her, because there wasn't any relationship to close, but to see whether facing that part of my past would help me move forward. I imagined walking into a room filled with people who already disliked me. I imagined the looks, the whispered conversations, the expectation that I would perform grief I didn't feel. In the end I didn't go. Not out of anger. Mostly because I realized I still wasn't ready to step back into that environment without feeling like the unwanted kid again. That realization felt honest instead of defensive. Dad called me that evening after the funeral. He sounded hollow, like someone who had run out of energy entirely. He told me it was strange packing up medical equipment after years of living around it. The house felt empty in a way he didn't know how to handle. For once, the conversation wasn't about convincing me of anything. It was just two people talking awkwardly after a long distance. We didn't resolve everything. There wasn't some big emotional breakthrough where years of neglect disappeared. He didn't suddenly become the father I needed growing up, and I didn't suddenly feel like offering comfort came naturally. But the conversation stayed calm, and that alone felt new. Over the next week he called a few more times. Short conversations about normal things, school, weather, what I planned to do after graduation. It felt almost unfamiliar hearing him ask questions that weren't connected to caregiving or crisis. I'm not pretending everything is fixed. There's still resentment there, and probably always will be. 5 years of distance doesn't vanish because of a few conversations. But something shifted slightly. He stopped demanding emotional labor from me, and I stopped feeling like every interaction had to be a battle. The weirdest part is realizing I don't feel like a monster anymore. For a while I thought refusing to go meant there was something wrong with me. Now it feels more like I protected a boundary that younger me never had the power to enforce. Grandpa told me the other night that adulthood sometimes means accepting that relationships settle into imperfect shapes instead of clean resolutions. That seems accurate. My dad and I are talking again, but carefully, like people learning a language neither of us practiced for years. I still don't regret what I said. It was harsh, and I know it hurt him, but it was also true. Pretending otherwise would have been easier in the moment and worse in the long run. Right now life at Grandpa's is normal again. Homework, dinner, stupid TV shows in the evening. The silence doesn't feel heavy anymore. It just feels peaceful. I don't know what my relationship with my dad will look like going forward. Maybe it improves slowly. Maybe it stays distant but polite. What I do know is that showing up for myself didn't turn me into the cruel person everyone warned me about. It just made me honest about what I could and couldn't give. And for the first time since all of this started, I'm not questioning whether protecting myself automatically makes me the bad guy.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Daily Tales Update for more such stories.